Hi everyone. For those of you who are here already, just to check that the chat does work, can someone just type something in the chat saying yes, it works, or and whether you can hear me as well and see the slides? Perfect, great, thank you. What we'll do is we'll wait for a couple more minutes. Um, we'll wait until 10:02 probably, until more people come in, and then we'll get started afterwards. Okay, so we'll wait a couple more minutes and then we'll get started just so more people can join. Okay. I think I'll get started. If more people want to join, I think they can do the first few slides are more just introductory slides. Um, so hopefully more people will join us soon. So this session, I think if people saw the social media advertising, it's all about BMAT changes and introduction to the UCAT as well. Just to update you on what's going on for this year when you're applying for medicine. So a little bit about us. So we're a company which was created by medical students to provide lots of teaching and tutorials for other individuals who want to study medicine. We run a lot of crash courses as well as one-to-one tutoring. So the crash courses are on various topics. So in the summer, we start off usually with personal statement courses and how to write your personal statement. And then we usually, between the summer and around September time, we have UCAT crash courses where we go through each of the sections in detail and how to answer each type of question. Interviews comes later on in the year, so between sort of October, November, all the way until February. And again, that talks you through how to answer different types of interviews. And you'll also have mock interviews and same thing for Oxbridge as well. In terms of tutoring, so I've been involved in this as well, where I've helped students with their UCAT prep on a one-to-one basis, and also with their personal statements, and mostly with their interview practice as well. It's really good because you can get more individualized feedback. So if that's of any interest to any of you guys, make sure to have a look at the website, obviously. A little bit about me. So I'm a final year medical student at Bristol. I did do an intercalation, which is a 1 year degree that you do as an add-on to your medical degree in between third and fourth year. And I did that in a different university, which was at Imperial. I'm really passionate about teaching, and my main interests in medicine are endocrinology, so everything to do with hormones, so diabetes, thyroid problems, that kind of thing. Ophthalmology, so eye disease, and just general medicine. Is something I really enjoy. So looking at what we're going to cover today. So the first thing I'm going to do is just talk you through what the BMAT actually is, and why was it a thing before, and why has it now been scrapped, and talk to you about what are the pros of it being scrapped and how you can just focus on the UCAT essentially. Then I'll go on to introduce you to what the UCAT actually is if people don't already know, and talk you through each of the sections, and talk you through important dates that you need to know in order to register for the UCAT this summer, and also top tips in general for how to study for the UCAT. So general housekeeping, I think everyone is already muted, but please stay muted during the session. If you do want to ask a question, please use the chat box, which does seem to be working, and make sure you type your answers in the chat box, or your questions, sorry, and I'll try and answer them as I go or later on. Okay. In terms of aims for today, I just want you guys to go away with having understood why the BMAT was scrapped, and also be able to navigate how to actually prepare for the UCAT. So starting off with the BMAT first. So it's the biomedical admissions test. And essentially, the BMAT and the UCAT are both admissions tests for you to get into medicine. Some universities use the BMAT, whilst other universities use the UCAT. So BMAT was one of these tests for medicine, and it's essentially a 2-hour examination, and it's split into 3 sections. So the first section is your aptitude skills. So they ask a lot of sort of generalized questions, and ask you how you would manage different problems, essentially. And it's very, very similar to the UCAT, in which the questions are set out in this section. So lots of people, because they've been revising for the UCAT as well, if they've applied to both UCAT and BMAT universities, find this section a little bit easier. Section 2 is all about your scientific knowledge and skills. So that's essentially your GCSE level or A level science and knowledge. So you have questions on biology, chemistry, physics, and maths. Section 3 was your writing task. So essentially, it's a 1-page essay. You get given 4 different debate topics. You choose one of them, and you have to write a short 1-page essay debating basically pros and cons of it, or discussing that topic in a bit more depth. So it was quite a versatile exam, testing both sort of general skills and IQ, as well as your scientific knowledge, as well as your essay skills. And I think what a lot of people struggled with is being able to actually revise for all these different sections alongside their A levels, because the BMAT was usually held once year 13 already started, and there was a set date. It wasn't a date that you could choose. It was a given date in September and another given date in November. So a lot of people did find it difficult juggling revising for their BMAT and also making sure to get their predicted grades on par, and as well as doing their application for medicine and submitting their UCAS application. So I think there's a lot of cons with the BMAT. And the other issue was that there's not a lot of universities which actually use the BMAT. So out of, I don't know, 30, 40 Russell Group universities, there were only about 7 who used the BMAT. So Brighton and Sussex, Imperial, UCL, Lancaster, Cambridge, Oxford, and Leeds were the only ones that used the BMAT. So because there weren't that many people actually taking the BMAT, I think that was one of the other reasons why the BMAT is now scrapped. moving on to this bit, I'll just go skip the scoring because that's not really relevant. So why was it actually removed? Well, the BMAT essentially was removed because in November 2022 via the Cambridge Assessment Admissions Testing website. And the reason for this is because it costs £75 to actually sit the exam for UK applicants and a little bit more for international applicants. Yeah, and the other thing is there were very few medical students who were actually sitting the BMAT because there weren't as many people applying to those 7 specific universities compared to the number of people applying to UCAT. And in general, most people who applied for BMAT, who sat the BMAT, also sat the UCAT because they were applying to a mix of BMAT and UCAT-based universities. So because of this, basically it was financially an unsustainable exam to run for prospective medical students. So that's one of the other reasons why it was removed. So what's exactly happening now? Well, we've got all universities will only use the UCAT for 2025 entry onwards, which is, I think, is a really, really good idea because it makes sure that you have sort of a general consensus of how you're going to be marked and you don't have to write 2 or 3 admissions tests and be stressed about it over the summer. So benefits of just doing the UCAT, as I said, reduces the workload because you're just doing one admissions test, which is really good because it means that you have more time to focus on each of the UCAT sections so that you can maximize your UCAT score. Because the UCAT is a really tough exam. It's got 5 sections, they're all aptitude based, but each of these questions require a different set of techniques in order to get things right and do really well in each section to get your overall high score. It also means that you have more time to focus on your A levels and your if you're taking on an EPQ and your coursework and things like that. So it just and the reason for that is because with the UCAT you can take the exam during the summer holidays, and it's something that you book yourself. So it's taken between June to all the way up until September, which is the last deadline. I think the last date you can take it on, and it's good because you have choice of which date you'd like to do your exam on. If you want to do it on a Saturday, you can do it on a Saturday. If you want to do it on a quieter day, like a Tuesday or Wednesday when other people are at work or when there's going to be less people at the test centre doing a driving test as well, because the test centre you use to do your UCAT exam is the same test centre where they do driving tests and other exams as well. So it's not just for medical students. So it might be a little bit quieter on work days. So you have that flexibility of choosing the date, choosing when you're ready, and also if you are within, I think, 4 or 6 weeks, and you think, actually, no, I need even more time to study for the UCAT, you can postpone the date to a later date to make sure that you're absolutely ready. Whereas with the BMAT, obviously, there was a set date and you had to study and get it all sorted by then. So there's a little bit more flexibility with the UCAT, really. The problem with BMAT was it focused on lots of variety of skills. So it was a really, really tough exam, especially for people who, for example, did physics at GCSE, but didn't necessarily do it at A level. And you do tend to forget a lot of concepts that are required knowledge in the BMAT exam. And that can make it even more tough because it means that you're going back on your content from GCSE and revising that. So in that sense, just being able to do the UCAT for your guys' entry year is really good because it just gives you more time, more focus on one specific exam. Okay, now talking about the UCAT itself and what it involves. So the UCAT is the University Clinical Aptitude Test. So it's another admissions test and it's used by lots of universities for medicine and dentistry. It's essentially a computer-based multiple choice question exam. And you book the test through Pearson VUE test centres, as I said. If you're applying for 2025 entry, which is, I'm guessing most of you guys who are on this Zoom call today, or if you're doing a deferred entry to 2026, you're going to have to sit the UCAT exam this summer, so between August and October 2024. So important aspects of the actual exam is a £70 fee, but at least it's just £70 rather than £70 plus the fees for BMAT as well. So it's a £70 fee to sit the exam for UK students. I think for international students, it's a little bit higher. If you are a student who usually gets a bursary or who gets some sort of support financially, you can get a reduced fee, but please make sure to check the UCAT official admissions test website, which will give you more information on exactly how much the fee would be based on your bursary or your financial basis in your family. The thing with UCAT to remember is if you're applying for 2024 to 2025 entry, sorry, this you can only have one go at the exam. You can't keep retaking it until you get a really good score per academic cycle. So whatever score you get with your first attempt is the one that you will apply with for university. If that's not good enough, or if you don't get in this year, you'll have to rewrite the UCAT next year. So that's essentially how it works. The good thing with UCAT as well is you get your results immediately. So it's a computer-based exam, and the scores go straight to the admin individuals. The admin then print out your UCAT score and hand it over to you so that you can know exactly what mark you got in each subsection, and also know your overall score and your band for your SJT score, which I'll go over in a second. And this is really good because you have your results immediately, it means that you can really evaluate which universities are the ones to go for. And I'll talk in a couple of slides about which universities to apply for if you have a really good UCAT score, and which universities to apply for if you don't have such a great score, because universities use the UCAT in very, very different ways, which is actually an advantage to you guys, because sometimes it is a matter of luck on the day. You might have got particularly harder questions, so you might not score as well as you did in your mock exams, which will then make you reevaluate applying to, I don't know, Bristol, which uses a really high UCAT score, and going somewhere else. Or you might have done really, really well and actually done better than your mock exams. And you might think, and you might have originally thought about sort of a medium score UCAT university, but now you think actually you can aim for a higher score UCAT university. So really be flexible, and don't, and obviously some people do have a dream university in their head that they want to go to, but try and be flexible with the universities, because bear in mind that wherever you go to study medicine, it's going to be really, really good, because all the medicine courses are regulated by the GMC, and so they have to achieve the same similar standards to produce that good set of doctors. So it doesn't matter which university you go to study medicine, because it's such a good degree and so well laid out in all universities. So if you, on the day, for example, if you think you can't apply to the university that you really wanted to go to because of your UCAT score, it's not the end of the world. There are 50 other universities that you can apply to. So looking at the sections, so we've got these 5 sections of the which make up the UCAT essentially. Your first section is your verbal reasoning section. This is the one people find the hardest because they give you a long bit of text, and it's like a comprehension assessment. They'll ask you a question and they'll say, is this statement true, false, or can you not tell from the passage? And the problem with this section is that because it's such a long bit of passage and you only have about 28 seconds per question, it's all about technique and speed. And the way you do this is don't read the entire passage, just look through keywords that you can find from the statement they're asking you to evaluate whether it's true or false, and then look for those specific keywords in the text, and then find the sentence, read that sentence, get the context, and then answer the question. That's the only way really you can do this section really well. So that's verbal reasoning, and you've got 44 questions to do in 21 minutes. So the main thing with UCAT overall is that it's a time critical exam. So it's nothing to do with, if I revise this much, I'm going to do really well. It's not like the exams you've done before. It's an aptitude exam, and it's technique based, and it's time based. So that's how your revision should really change when you're studying for the UCAT. And it's very difficult to adapt at first, which is why you need more time to do it, which is why starting early, so from now onwards, in April, all the way until July, or whenever you decide to have your test date, is really good, because you're easing yourself into it, you're getting used to the questions, you're making sure that you're practicing, and practice will make perfect with this exam. The next section is decision making. So essentially you get lots of different puzzles or logical puzzles and things like that, or problems to solve, probability questions, things like that is what you would get in this section. You'll essentially have the most amount of time for this section. And that's because you do have to think a little bit more than other sections and draw out diagrams and try and figure out what's going on, because they give you a lot of information and you kind of have to put that together and decide which is the correct answer. There's a little bit of maths and decision making as well. So you have 29 questions in 31 minutes. So you have just over a minute to do this to do per question. QR, or quantitative reasoning, is your maths. It's a lot to do with mental maths and a lot to do with being quick at your maths. So evaluating numerical information. So very, very GCSE level based. They will ask you things like speed, distance, time. They will ask you about currency changes, and they will ask you about, what else was there? Percentage increase, percentage decrease, percentage change. All your basic GCSE level maths is what will be tested here. You'll essentially have 36 questions to do in 25 minutes. So you'll have about 40 seconds per question. Bearing in mind, some questions you'll probably finish a lot faster than others. So you might take 20 seconds to do one question, and then you can use the remaining 20 seconds of that question to add on to another question which you might be struggling on. Abstract reasoning is the other one that people find difficult. This is very, very similar if you guys remember doing entrance exams to grammar schools, or in general any school, non-verbal reasoning, and essentially it's lots of different shapes and trying to find the pattern within a set of shapes, and making sure to answer the next question based off of that. You get 50 questions to do in 12 minutes. So this is really, really time critical. You only have 20 seconds per question. The next one is situational judgment, and this probably is the easiest section that people find. And essentially, you get given medical scenarios or real life ethical scenarios where you essentially have to decide what is the most appropriate thing to do, or what is the most important aspect to consider in each question. This one I probably found the most enjoyable because it was very medical related. It was putting things into medical scenarios, saying things like, Dr. X came into work drunk. You saw this as a medical student. How would you approach this? It's that kind of ethical reasoning. And the best tip for that section is to read over your GMC guidance to good medical practice. And it's a free PDF document available on the GMC website. It's recommended that all prospective medical students and medical students should be reading that document, because it tells you exactly how to act as a medical student or a doctor. And it essentially is your legal and ethical guidance of being a doctor. Everyone should read it because, one, it helps you with this SJT section, and two, it will help you with your interviews as well later on. So 69 questions, which you have to do in 26 minutes. So how does scoring work for the UCAT? So you've got your cognitive subtests, which is what I call your verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, and abstract reasoning. And those are scored between 300 to 900 for each section. The 300 is your lowest mark, 900 is your highest mark. Most people get around 620, 630, 640s. Marks are then combined for an overall score between 1,200 to 3,600. The non-cognitive subtest, which is your SJT section, is expressed in a banding. So your band 1 is your highest band, and band 4 is your lowest band. Usually if you get a band 1 or 2, you're more likely to get invited for interview. Band 3, less likely, but still maybe interviewed. Band 4, unlikely that you're interviewed. Just because the situational judgment test is a judge of your character and your morals and ethics. That's what they're essentially testing you on. And usually, not many people get a band 4. And if you get a band 4, you really don't understand those ethical principles and those medical principles. That's another reason why I say to people, before you do the SJT exam, always make sure to read that guidance, because it does tell you how to do the exam essentially, and how to behave in a medical sense, because you might be unsure of what exactly is the correct answer, but looking at the GMC guidance can really help you with that. Okay, average scores from last year. So for the verbal reasoning section, it was about 591. So you can see in general, verbal reasoning is the one that loads of people struggle with. Decision making, people got around 623 last year. Quantitative reasoning was the one of the best ones, so 649. Abstract reasoning, people actually did quite well in. Normally, people tend to do a bit lower in abstract reasoning as well, but last year people seemed to find that section quite good, and they scored the highest actually compared to any of the other sections. Just as a rough idea of how many people score a band 1 and a band 2, last year 25% of people scored a band 1. So band 1 is really, really hard to get, but band 2 is a good SJT score. Band 1 is just over the top excellent. So band 2, 39% of candidates managed to score that. So over 50% essentially were able to get a band 1 or a band 2. Then there were the others who struggled a little bit and ended up with either a band 3 or a band 4. And I've put down here 620 per section is considered average. I wouldn't say good, I would say average. I'd aim for at least 640 per section or 650 per section and higher, because then that will give you an overall really high score. And the reason why the subsection scores and the overall score are both important is because some universities place more importance on each subsection score, like St. George's University, whereas other universities prefer looking at the overall score rather than the individual scores. So different universities use the UCAT and score it differently to invite you for an interview. So just to go over timelines for UCAT. So around 14th of May, so coming up soon next month, at 9:30, you can start to open your account and register for a place in UCAT. And you can also, if you have got bursaries or access arrangements, those applications open, so make sure to apply. I would say apply as early as possible. So on the day, just apply, have this date on your phone, make sure that you register for an account, make sure you apply, make sure you do everything and have a look at what dates are available and things like that. I think from the 18th of June, so a month later, the booking opens. So you'll be able to see what dates are available for you guys to book a test. And then testing starts from the 8th of July. And it ends at 15th of September. 15th of September is the access arrangement application deadline. And the booking deadline is a couple of days later on the 19th of September. The last test date is going to be the 26th of September. So you do have a while, so you can take the exam anytime between 8th of July and 26th of September. Personally, I took the exam in August just because I wanted it out of the way so that I can focus completely on my A-levels and my UCAS application. Other people like to do it later because it gives them more time to study. So whatever works for you, that's what you should go with. 27th of September is when the bursary scheme application deadline is on 4 p.m. 15th of October, it's the national deadline for UCAS. So if you're applying for medicine, you always have an earlier UCAS deadline, which will be on the 15th of October. And then results are sent to universities in early November. So just make sure to be aware. So you don't actually have to contact the universities and tell them what your UCAT results are. The results are sent directly from UCAT to your universities. So the piece of paper that you get for your scores is merely just for you and for your decision making on which universities you want to apply to. It's not for you to send over to the universities. That will get sent directly. So top tips for the UCAT. So I would say start preparing now so that you can sit the exam between July to August. And the reason why I say that is because probably this month you'll just be starting to look at the content, starting to look at the different sections and getting used to it. The next month, probably start your official preparation and making sure you have a revision schedule and knowing exactly when you're going to revise what. And June, it will be even more revision, doing lots of mock exams, things like that. And then July, you should be sort of ready to do the exam kind of thing. So that's how I would set out the revision schedule or your goals essentially monthly. Avoid test bookings in September. This is just a personal opinion of mine. And the reason why I think that is because you can just get it out of the way in the summer, focus on your A-levels. It's less stress because you're not battling A-levels, UCAS application, personal statement, and the UCAT. And it also means that because you have your results for your UCAT earlier, whether you've done really well, whether you've done not as well as you thought you would, you just have more time to carefully choose which university you want to apply to. Whereas if you're doing it, for example, on the 26th of September, so the last test date, yes, you do still have a little bit of time until 15th of October, UCAS deadline, but usually lots of schools have an earlier deadline for you to submit your UCAS application by. And it's just a lot of stress trying to research all the different universities then based on your UCAT score. So where to apply based on the UCAT score? I think I did mention this a bit earlier. So if you've got a really, really good score, these are all the universities you can apply for. So Birmingham, Bristol, Cambridge, Oxford, and things like that are now have a higher weighting on the UCAT score in your application to then decide whether or not you should be invited for an interview. So Bristol, I know last year only used the UCAT. They didn't look at a personal statement at all, and they only interviewed applicants based on UCAT score. And I think Oxford and Cambridge might do similar things this year as well. We don't know because they haven't done a UCAT admissions assessment before. They're only doing it new this year, and same with some other universities. But make sure to look at the individual university website, which will tell you how much percentage or weighting they're taking the UCAT score into account. Some other universities don't really look at the UCAT score as much, and they actually place more preference on your predicted A-level grades, your GCSEs, and your and your personal statement. So if you've got an average score, you can apply to all of these universities. And there is still a massive chunk of universities, even if you don't get a good score to get into these universities, to be able to get into one of these universities. If you do, unfortunately, on the really badly on the day, there's still some other universities that you can apply to medicine with. So Cardiff in particular, if you've got really, really good GCSEs, but not a great UCAT score, apply there because they actually have a point system where depending on how many nines or eights or sevens you get. So I think for a 9 or an 8, you get 2 points. And for each GCSE where you get a 7, you get 1 point or something like that. So they'll add all of that up and then they use that number as part of your scoring in order to invite you for an interview alongside personal statement and your UCAT. But bear in mind with Cardiff was in the past, and when because I interviewed at Cardiff as well, when I applied, we had in the interview, we had a section on what did we have? So we had a section where it was not really speaking to an interviewer, but it was a station where they gave us a workbook and it was loads of maths questions, very similar to quantitative reasoning. So they instead test your quantitative reasoning skills in the actual interview in a station. Don't know if they still do it, but 6 years ago, obviously I applied in 2017. 6 years ago they did use that, and a couple of years ago they did use that. So whether they're going to bring that back, we don't know. Okay. And the other thing to do is look at the 6med page, because it's got lots of information on exact scores that you need to apply to each of these universities. This is essentially just a summary, but there's lots more information on the actual website. So how are you going to get started with the UCAT? Well, I'd start off by looking on the official UCAT website just to get your head around what the UCAT is, how it works, what each of the sections look like. The official UCAT website has 3 mock exams that they've generated. The people who write the UCAT have released 3 mock exams for you guys to complete. And the format of it looks exactly like how it would come out in the actual exam. And I would recommend doing it on a desktop, not on a laptop, because a desktop is where you'd be doing it in your actual exam. So get used to the mouse, get used to the keyboard, get used to the shortcut keyboard functions that you can use on the day to save you time. Practice all of that and complete a mock exam. And do this even before you've looked at any UCAT material. And the reason why I say this is because this is going to be your baseline score. And it's essentially going to help you identify which sections you're naturally weaker at and which sections you're naturally better at. And that will help you create your revision timetable specific to you. to know which sections do you need more focus on, or which sections did you particularly find hard that maybe you need a little bit more TLC for. After having done that, create a study plan and set monthly milestones. So you can say, as I said, in April, just essentially just do that mock exam. That can just be the only goal. So by the end of April, I need to have done a mock exam, know my weaker areas, know my stronger areas, and have created a study plan. That could literally, because obviously April, we're nearly at the end of it now. So for the next 8 days, that could be your goal. For May, you could then say, I need to start, doing my revision plan, working on these sections, blah, 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 doing a couple more mocks. June, I need to be ready, essentially, and I need to have done all the mocks and gone through lots of questions in whichever question bank you choose. So SixMed has a massive question bank as well that you can, and it is something that you pay for, but have a look at the revision resources you have and choose the one that's best for you. And then in July, you should be ready to do your exam, or July or August, whenever you decide to do your exam. Measure your progress. And the reason why I say measure your progress for any exam, any revision that you're doing, is it's just a bit of motivation, and it also tells you where you're at with things, and it makes sure that you're on track. So the best way to do this is Excel. It's the easiest way. I would just put each of the sections and then put weekly scores on there, or daily scores, whatever you want to do, however in depth you want to look at it. And then you could also have another table below that saying mock exams, and put mock exam 1, 2, 3, whatever, so the scores of that, and track it. And obviously you would have done your mock, the official UCAT mocks, you probably will get through them within the first couple of months. I would advise you, this first mock that you did before any revision, redo that mock later on and see how much your score improves as well, because that again is another motivator, but it also shows you how far you've come and how much you know now. I would say in general, repeat all the mocks twice, because it just gives you a little bit more confidence, especially if your score improves, or if it's really good and it stays like that, it shows that you're being consistent and working really hard. So do that through MS Excel. I also do this for my medical school exams, and it's just a really good way to keep track of what you're good at, what you're not so good at, what you need to spend a bit more time on. So yeah, that moves on to the next point. So make sure that if you get a question wrong, don't just say, okay, I've got that question wrong, and move on. Actually look through the question. Lots of online question banks will have explanations of why that answer is the correct answer. Try and understand that, because if you don't do that bit, and if you just skip past the questions you got wrong, you're never going to improve in your scores. You need to understand why you made that mistake, and you need to understand how not to make that mistake again in similar questions and with the same question if it does come up in the future. So make sure you focus when you're looking at mistakes. So if you've done a ton of like 50 questions or something in one go, it's tiring to then go and look at all the mistakes and try and have that full concentration. So after you've done a set of 50 questions, take a 15-minute break, then come back and look through all your answers, look through the ones you got wrong, and then focus, because otherwise you just burn out so easily. So make sure you take breaks in between as well. And choose your preferred question bank for it. So SixMed has UCAT Ninja, which is really good. And SixMed also have mock exams on the UCAT Ninja. So they have additional mock exams on top of the UCAT official website that you can use as well. And the main thing that I'll keep preaching is practice. So how are you actually going to choose what resources are right for you? Now, I used a combination of all of these, and some people might prefer some over others. So I'm going to go over all of them. So in terms of books, it's got lots of UCAT questions and explanations of answers. I'll go through which book I used in a second. But the problem is it can be outdated potentially, some of the questions, especially because the UCAT, the types of questions and the amount of time you have per question changes every year. They make slight tweaks, and the books might not reflect that. They also obviously are only going to have a limited number of questions available. However, and obviously they're going to be in a book, but Some books, obviously, they have like a scratch code that you can then use in digital version of that book for, or like an online platform where you can practice those same questions in like a more interactive way where they check your time and things like that. So if they have that, if you find a book like that, make sure to use that one because that will probably be more useful. Sometimes with books, the explanations may not always be clear. So it's then difficult to go and, I don't know, contact someone to ask them exactly what the right answer is, even if you don't understand it. Whereas if it's an online platform, you can easily chat with someone who's created that website so that you can, or someone who will clarify what the questions mean or what the answer means straight away. The exam is obviously held online, so practicing just with books is probably not recommended. So because you still need to practice navigating the computer in that time. And just so that you don't get flustered and you're well prepped, I just naturally preferred online resources. I did start with books, and that's always a good starting point. But the main thing to use is online platforms because that was just so useful. Videos, so some websites with the questions, with each subsection, they actually have videos explaining how to answer each question type and giving you examples of sort of techniques of how to deal with these questions. One good thing about videos, it's a visual format, so it helps you shows you how to solve questions visually. And it's a really good starting point to understand how to answer questions. So these two resources I would probably use at the start of my revision. Practice platforms I would then move on to. So I think this is probably one of the best resources because you get a vast question bank that you can practice under timed conditions. And you also get really detailed feedback because lots of these questions are written by individuals who've sat the UCAT or who have written questions for the official UCAT. So if you don't understand it, you can contact people to explain it to you. And they will offer lots of mock exams as well outside of the official UCAT mocks that are available. If you're really, really struggling and would like a bit more one-to-one support, then I would recommend something like tuition. And that's to help in areas of weakness. And usually the one-to-one tuition with SixMed is run by current medical students who have achieved really high scores and they've tutored lots of students before. And you can essentially choose how many sessions you want and what exactly you want to focus on in each of these sessions. So you could have a day where you're revising yourself on verbal reasoning and decision making because that's your strongest section, but then in the evening have a 1 hour tuition session in quantitative reasoning because that's your weakest section, that kind of thing. So you can play around with that a little bit. And you can also get some inside tips on how to do well in the UCAT. So if you're interested in that, have a look at our website, obviously. So this is the website I used, so not the website, sorry, this is the book that I used when I first started, thinking about what even is the UCAT, how do I go about this? So that is essentially the book I used. And I think it has been updated because obviously previously UCAT was called UKCAT, so they've added that in there and it seems a little bit newer. So I probably had the second edition or the first edition, so it's now the fourth edition. So it seems quite updated if you guys do want to get that. Or go straight to things like you can look on SixMed. Another thing that to note is we do have something called the UCAT Crash Course, which is a day course, and it's essentially run by medical students who have scored really highly in their UCAT. They go through each subsection, lots of questions, very interactive with a small group of you, and they also go through how to answer each type of question, which is really good. Okay. If you'd like some more support in deciding which resources are probably the best for you, SixMed can help. So if you want to give us a call or if you want to chat on WhatsApp to discuss which resources might be best for your learning needs, just make sure to contact us and they'll be able to tailor that for you. So just looking at some guidance, so I would first start off with the official UCAT website and then looking at the SixMed UCAT resources. And then there's also a little hyperlink here to talk, which basically just gives you a lot of information about the UCAT in general, which is another website, and another link from SixMed. So that will be really useful as well. So that was the end of my presentation. But does anyone have any questions? Please put them in the chat. I'll wait for a couple of minutes if anyone does have questions. What is a good UCAT score? I think it really varies according to the universities, which is why, as I said, make sure to go and look on the SixMed website where it says the specific scores you need for each university. I would say on average, it would be around 640 for each section, would be a really good score, like a solid score. And that would be around like 2,500, I think, or 2,560 or something like that, in total as an overall score. I wouldn't sort of have, oh, I need to get this exact mark kind of thing, because I think that just makes people burn out and have like a negative mindset towards their UCAT score. I would just say aim for an average of 630 per section or 640 per section. Have that kind of a goal. And go with that. But if you have a specific university that you really want to go to, then I would probably look up what score they used last year as a cutoff to invite people for interview and aim for that or higher. Now that BMAT is not there, will the average UCAT score increase? I don't know. I think averages will be what, you know, the it'll be like a normal distribution. There'll always be people who get really low scores, and there'll always be people who get really high scores. And the majority of people will be in that middle. Maybe the average will go slightly higher, but it's very, very difficult to tell because you're a completely different cohort. And like all those personal factors and those individual factors will affect your overall score. Your test center, what questions you get on the day from that giant question bank, they will all be contributing factors to deciding what the overall score is, or that it might be a particularly difficult year for UCAT exam, so your average might be lower. So it's really hard for me to say that now. How do you prevent burnout? I've heard you should only prepare for around 6 to 8 weeks. I think you need to take regular breaks. When I say start in April, I don't mean like go full on prep. I'm saying try and get yourself introduced to it and try and understand what the questions are. But what they mean by 6 to 8 weeks of prep is 6 to 8 weeks of daily multiple choice questions and timing yourself, pretending like you're doing the actual exam. That's what they mean by 6 to 8 weeks of prep. What I mean in terms of when you start any topic, for example, if you're starting a topic in biology, if you don't know it at the start, the first thing you do is go read up on it. You get set homework on it. So that's essentially what you're doing for yourself in April, and a little bit of May. Then obviously you get tested on it, so you start revising for that topic. Then you get tested on that topic plus 5 other topics in a mock exam, which is what the overall UCAT would be like. So that's what I mean when I say you're setting yourself up for each month, not you're revising all of those 12 weeks and then doing an exam. That's not what I mean. How do you suggest we get the timing right, as it's very time pressured? Thank you. As I said, I've put some guidance on each how many seconds per question. Make sure to follow that. And the only way you can practice for timings is by doing more practice, and also having a timer and being really strict with yourself, that you stop straight away. You don't just carry on even if the time is gone. And the best way to do it is through these online resources, because they will just end the exam just like your official UCAT exam will do, and just practicing under that time over and over and over again. With your math section, to speed up the quantitative reasoning section, just practice mental maths, mental arithmetic, because it will help you get a lot faster if you just are able to work out percentages in your head and things like that. If you have a couple of tricks, multiplying things. So if they give you a number like 50,500 or something like that, then just making sure to round it down to 50,000 or something like that, to then get a rough idea of where your answer will be, and then choosing your answer based on that. So what I mean by that is using rounding techniques with your maths, so that you can roughly think this is the most likely answer. searching in your answer options, because there'll obviously be multiple choice, and seeing which answer fits best with that and then going with that one. So that will all help you in terms of time. Higher average score because Oxford or Cambridge students will sit the same exam now and push this up given their potential abilities being higher. We don't know. We don't really know because the UCAT exam is it's not like a exam of just because you do really well in your A levels or something like that. That's not a direct reflection of how well you're going to do in the UCAT. It's an aptitude test. It's very different. So I think you can't tell really. I don't think just because people who are applying to Oxford and Cambridge, they're going to be able to do better than other people. We don't know that. I don't think you can confidently say that. How can we understand the acceptable UCAT score for unis that use the BMAT before? They will release their cutoff scores. That's how you'll know. The thing with Oxford as well, it's not just the UCAT. They have lots of other requirements for their candidates. So if you are thinking about applying there, make sure you look at their website because it won't just be UCAT. Because last year, yes, they had BMAT, but they also had you need to have done some recommended reading. Your personal statement really needs to be top notch. So Oxford and Cambridge, they will have additional requirements. Okay, I think that was all the questions. Oh, we've got one more. We're doing a 6 med crash course on 2 days, do different contents. I don't really understand the question. What do you mean by that? As in, if you did the same UCAT crash course on 2 different days? If that is what you mean, no. So they're standardized courses. They'll teach the same thing across the crash courses. It doesn't matter when they're doing it. It'll be different tutors, but the content that's taught will be the same. Okay, I think that was all the questions. Does 6med offer anything on research topics? Um, I'm not too sure is the answer. I'd have a look at the website. I'm not too sure about that. If people don't have any questions, you don't have to hang around. So have a good rest of your weekend. If you do have questions or want to hang about and ask something, please do. I'll be on here until 10:55. Thanks, guys.